And we are rolling on part 2 of our debate on scientists using computer models are able to accurately predict future climate events. For the government was Michael and Yung Shung, and for the opposition, Karina and Tanner. Come on, let's start over here. Come on. Excuse me, Ma? Oh, yeah, you want me to do my job? Okay. Nice way to get these things. And the decision on a 23-2 tabulation goes to the, surprise, affirmative. Michael's not. I won! Okay. We're here, ma'am. You know this in here?
Oh wait, I think I voted. Oh yeah.
You were the one who was rock and roll.
Yeah, that was my bad. I
I'm
had to
Chandler.
vote for that.
I voted
Hi,
for the
Chandler.
Doesn't matter anyways.
I voted for the government side. I think that this debate was kind of like a textbook case of how to debate and how not to debate. I feel like you guys worked really hard on your delivery and your presentation. But ultimately for me, I felt like your arguments just weren't very well researched. I'm sorry if that sounds bitchy. But I felt like the
You were speaking to the negative then? Was that who you were speaking to?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I felt like the facts that you researched were very well constructed. I really appreciated the way that you guys handled cross-examination. Karina, I felt like you did a really good job structuring your speech, and I also feel that you spoke with confidence, and I really liked the way that you outlined the whole trajectory of your speech. But I have to say it was really difficult for me to find any merit with your side, simply because I felt like Tanner, the way that you approached the cross-examination was maybe a little aggressive. But overall, I think that everybody did a good job.
Yeah. I want to say something about that. I've said it before, I'll say it again, but You know, Tanner, you're a smart guy, but you don't want to become the issue. Let the debate arguments be the issue. Don't be so aggressive and so rude that people just say, I don't care how brilliant you are, I'm going to drop you. I'm going to vote against you. And you don't need that, right?
What the hell?
Right?
Come down either way.
Okay. Good. Okay, let's go.
Hi, I'm Ashley.
Hi, Ash.
Also voted for them as well. I'm not sure how to say your name. Yushan. You
See, someone
were
else can't say it.
you were really strong in the cross. Every point that Tanner had, like you just shot him down straight, and I was really impressed with that because like that means that you know what you are talking about, and with you were really comfortable talking to, and it was really easy to understand. Your guys' arguments were really organized. With the opposition, Karina, you had really good information, but the way that you were talking or like saying your arguments, it wasn't smoothly. You kind of like read right off the paper kind of the whole time. So I got the impression that you weren't prepared as them. And Tanner, like they said, you were really aggressive, and it kind of turned to the point where it wasn't really asking questions about like the arguments. It was just like towards you guys. Like, I'm not really good at explaining myself. Okay. But overall, you guys did all well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please.
I ultimately voted for the government, just because I felt like you guys had good delivery and evidence, which was obviously a great combo. Michael, I really liked your analogy at the beginning to sort of like introduce us instead of just starting right away, about like going to class. And Young-Shun, I thought you had the best delivery in terms of sounding logical and clear to follow. And your answers to the cross-examination questions were good. Karina, I thought you could have had a little bit stronger answers for your cross-examination, but I liked your brief because I could follow each of your points really well. And then Tanner, I thought, I kind of agreed with Young-Shun in that, like, Bjorn Lundberg, even though we're supposed to use it, is kind of outdated. But I thought I did enjoy your questions that you had because it seemed like you were following along everything that you said during your brief.
Yeah. Okay, go on. I'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah.
Michael, I also really liked your analogy at the beginning, and I liked how you were constantly going back to how you met the burden of proof. So was that like at the beginning of your brief, at the end of your brief, you know, like at the end of your obviously your refutation. But I felt that was really strong because it just like was like, well, we're right, and it was just kind of like in our faces. Yinshin, I thought that you had a lot of really, really strong evidence, and that like you definitely knew what you were talking about, and you had also very good variation in your pitch and tone, and it wasn't monotone. I didn't say that I voted for the government, but I voted for the government. I think that was my biggest problem with the opposition, is that it was very monotone the entire time. So like even if you do have like amazing information, like it makes it much harder to follow. Karina, I thought that when you said how many times have you heard it will be sunny and warm and it's cloudy and cold, I thought that was really good because obviously it's a lot of science and it's good to break it down that way. And Tanner, I thought that, you said, it's on the back there. I thought that you were good in your refutation because you talked about how there are instances of monetary corruption, but you kind of went back and like discussed what they were discussing in their refutation, so you took everything into account as opposed to just saying what you were going to say regardless. So I thought that was good too.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we're here.
I'm Kyra.
Hi, Kyra.
I voted for the government. I think they successfully met their burden of proof, and you in particular, you were really good during your cross-examinations. You asked really good questions and answered really effectively the ones that were given to you. But I do feel that during the cross-examination parts, it felt a little less like asking questions and more like my argument part two, but it was still good, and that was still really convincing and persuasive to me. So for the opposition, Tanner, you cited this 97% of models are inaccurate statistic. And I think that's a really big number, and it could really change people's minds, but I just felt like it wasn't adequately supported with other evidence. I feel like a number that big should be replicated in other studies or backed up by other statistics. Also, Karina, using chaos theory to support part of her argument just didn't really persuade me. I felt like I needed some more scientific evidence and data to back that up, to back up why the atmosphere can't be adequately analyzed. So, also mentioned you did a really good job at undermining the sources used by the opposition, and that really brought me to the evidence.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
I ended up voting for the government as well. I basically agree with a lot of things that were said earlier, so I'll try not to repeat anything. I thought Yunchen, you did a really good job at kind of stopping and then like re-explaining all of your points. I like that you laid it all out for us at the beginning. You're like, here are my first 3 points. And then I also liked how you made all these analogies and stuff like that to the like cheating and I can't remember, there was like another one in there. So I thought that was really good, and I thought your organization was really good. And I think, Michael, your rebuttal is actually what kind of swayed me more in the end. It just kind of like reaffirmed my position to like vote for you guys. I thought you did a good job of kind of bringing the whole debate as well as your argument back to the main point. You were like, oh well, even though like obviously not all of our models are going to be correct, but that's not, you know, the main argument, and so I thought you did a good job of doing that. And then as for the opposition, I thought, Karina, I know this was said before, you were like really strong and confident in your delivery and speech. I thought you did really well. And then Tanner, I thought you did have a lot of good organizations and sources, but I think just like giving it in a more, you know, like less aggressive way might have helped like you connect with your audience a little more, but overall great job to both sides.
Yes, please.
Hello. So I am the
Name?
black sheep, Jennifer,
Hi, Jennifer.
that went with the opposition, and I'll explain why. Michael, I think you did a really great job speaking. I think you guys definitely even had the harder side of the argument to begin with, and your burden of proof was harder to prove, but you had really good information, and you did a really good job in cross-examining Karina. I liked that you clarified for me that the scientists don't have to be accurate all the time to accurately predict models. However, just in my mind, I couldn't really get over the hump of knowing that they can't. But I think you did prove your claim really well in the moment. And then Karina, you had really good sources and a great speaking voice. I liked that you said that the universe is unpredictable. I think you could have had a stronger argument for when he asked you why it wasn't bias. But at the same time, that question wasn't really about the topic, which is why I kind of like disregarded it, because every source that almost everybody uses is somewhat biased, so I didn't think that was like an accurate question to kind of say like whether you were right or wrong. I think that you both, the first two people, could have come up with more questions for the cross-examination, because I think it's more exciting when like you're like, I have so much to say and I'm so informed on this and this is, you know, I'm so right, rather than just being like, all right, well, I have nothing else, when there's really like so much.
Hurts the credibility when you sit down with a minute left.
Yeah. Which I did too, so it's Yuncheng, yeah, Yuncheng, you were really good. I think you were the best speaker, especially when you talked about the intensity that's influenced by temperature change. That's where I kind of started to like shift more to your side. When you guys got into the debate, you and Tanner, about specific models, I kind of started losing you because I was focusing on the question, which was just whether they're able to accurately predict future climate events, and I feel like it kind of got into like, well, this model or that model, and I was like, I don't even know what models you're talking about anymore, but it wasn't like answering the question for me. Let's see. But I think you still did a really good job in cross-examining Tanner, and you had a lot of good data, and you really had a lot to say, which I really admired, and I liked that. Tanner, I actually followed your cross-examination really well in saying that some models can't predict the future, and I think that you supported that well in your brief.
I do have to say, while Tanner, like, everybody thinks he's super aggressive, it's because he's a boy, and, like, Yoonchung was just as aggressive. Not that that's bad, but, like, that was a good thing for her and a bad thing for him, which I think is totally unfair. Like, if he would have told me, like, oh, like, let me finish, everybody would have been like, oh, but she said it, and it's like, yeah, girl. So I feel like it's kind of like a gender thing, which I think is super unfair to judge it by. And then ultimately that's why I went with the opposition, because while I think you guys were super well spoken and well supported, I do think that overall, like, by you saying, like, almost 100% of scientists can't even do, like, the question, and when you restated the question, I was like, even though their argument was slightly more, like, well put together, your little pieces of evidence, like, overpowered that for me.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to hear one of the votes explained.
Hi, I'm Genevieve. I also went with the opposition for very similar reasons to Jen, but I'm going to differentiate it a little bit. I agree with the whole, I thought Tanner and Yunshin did a great job on cross-examining each other because I thought they were both equally aggressive in a positive light. I think if either one of them was less aggressive, then it would have made the other one seem more aggressive in my opinion. I also think, I thought, Michael, you were the best speaker. I really liked the way you laid out your whole argument, and I thought you were very clear. Karina, I think you did a really good job about kind of bringing in a little bit less of the models in and asking simpler questions to give people, I guess, the more average Joe an understanding of the debate. But overall, I agree with what Jen said. I think that little piece of evidence that the opposition provided kind of made the affirmative, and they never really addressed that of clearing it up. So, yeah.
Great. Yes, please. Yes.
Hi, I'm Crystal.
Hi, Crystal.
And I went with the government side. And so anyways, I don't want to repeat what everybody else said.
Good.
But, okay, I'll try to say something different. So, for Michael, I thought one of the strongest things you said was that uncertainties can be minimized enough to make accurate predictions. For Yunshun, I thought that the most powerful things you said were that computing power has increased every 5 years, your cheat analogy at the end, and how during cross-examination you brought up examples from like how we weren't as technologically advanced 20 years ago with like no Wi-Fi or Amazon. And for Karina, I thought the strongest points you said were that the future weather is unpredictable and that we can't even predict the weather of tomorrow. And for Tanner, the most important points you said were your bullseye analogy and how, like, if you throw a bunch of darts, like, you're bound to hit the target, and how NASA scientists said that 98.7% of climate models have been overestimated. But anyways, I voted for the government because I thought that they did successfully prove that computer models can predict future climate events. Not that they do it all the time, but they can do it sometimes. And yeah, I thought they easily discredited what the opposition said about how the IPCC is a corrupt organization and how models have flaws. So, yeah.
Great. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Aliana.
Hi, Aliana.
I voted for the government. I'll begin by saying I think the opposition did a great job. Karina, I loved how you organized your argument. You were a great speaker. And I think both of you guys did a really good job of kind of prefacing what you were going to say. I remember at the very beginning of your first speech you said, like, be skeptical, and I thought that was really good because it made me be skeptical as you were talking. And Tanner, I love the bullseye analogy as well. I think that was a really good thing for you to do when you started talking. Ultimately, though, I felt that the government was better in cross-exams, both in questioning and being questioned. Michael, there was one question where you almost had her, like you pushed it once, but if you pushed it one more time, it would have been awesome. But otherwise, you guys were, I think, great sports and did a really good job in structuring and delivering your argument, so I ultimately went with your side.
Good, thank you. Can I go ahead? Sure.
Hi, I'm Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Obviously, because we already know which two voted for the opposition, I voted for the government. I think because this is a fact debate, we're just looking at the evidence. Who knew the most about models? I think it was Yunshun. I think the information she knew about all the models. She convinced me that the reason why a majority of models are incorrect, or some models are incorrect, is because they're not designed for those specific locations. And those that are designed for those specific locations are the ones that get it right. So that kind of really debunked most of the opposition's thing. And just to address the whole gender thing, well, I kind of do agree with that. I did feel like Yunshin only was aggressive in response to the initial aggressiveness by Tanner. And the thing that kind of just turned me off was is she intentionally trying to, like, lie to us or mislead us? as if Yunshin was like this evil speaker benefiting from climate change or something like that.
Liar!
But at first, when Michael and both Karina spoke, I didn't have a decision. I thought both were really good. It was actually a really sound start. I did like the unpredictability of the future. But ultimately, Yunshin just knew so much more than everybody else about models, probably her stats background or something like that. So great job.
Yeah, you know, when we talked in lecture about a person's credibility can serve as evidence and be persuasive, I think we saw that in what you were just describing. There was a certain amount of credibility just seemed to come from how much work she had put into researching the topic. Behind you, Comm.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and
Hi, Daniel.
voted for the government because they met their burden of proof, and they did it in 3 ways which I thought were important. Like, they won the past tense debate because they established that past models have worked. They won the present tense debate because they noted that technology advances and people are always getting more knowledge. And thus they won the present tense debate when Michael said, like, not all models have to be accurate, and then Junsen said, I believe just a majority or something like that. And then to the battle of the sources, like, this debate is about making predictions, and then when Junsen highlighted the point that 7 out of 12 sources from Tanner were from 1998, that won me over. And also, like, just something to note, like, Karina cited the IPCC, and then Tanner said they were corrupted, so who am I to believe there? Just a point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing about this, I'll say one thing about this dueling evidence and this whole notion of it's okay to say the evidence is out of date if you have something more recent that updates it. Or it's okay to say he's a bad source if he's saying something bad. But, you know, in the absence of any evidence that counters it, that's the only evidence before the House, so.
First, Tanner, can you stop, Louis? Yeah. Tanner, first, can you stop looking at your laptop and like receive some of the feedback that people are giving you? I think it's kind of rude. They're talking to you and they're trying to give you honest feedback, but you're just staring at your laptop the whole time.
Yeah, thanks. I know that.
Okay, cool.
Whatever. Tanner, it appears you don't care, so if you don't care, we just won't give you any feedback. If you do care, we'll give you feedback. Right? Fair enough?
Sure.
Okay.
Alright, I went with the government. I think that you guys did a really great job. First, Michael, establishing kind of the main arguments of your group, and then Yunshun kind of going into depth, really exploring the models. The one feedback I had, kind of, Yunshun, you were the best speaker in my mind, but when you're talking about models and stuff, be careful, know your audience. You're in a room full of comm majors, and I know it made you seem credible to like speak in depth about it, but if you could put it in a little bit layman's terms, if possible, that would have been great. But I still found you credible, which won me over. Karina, I think that your argument was really strong. I liked how you used that IPCC source that Michael used and kind of used it to discredit some of his arguments. I thought that that was really strong. And the one thing I had was that he kind of did get you on that one source with the conservative-leaning disclaimer. Although I don't think that you, I don't really think that you kind of addressed that enough, like responding to him, even though it's kind of hard, you know, it's a little difficult. Yeah, and that's it. That's all I got. So.
Hi, Matana.
Hi, Matana.
Hi. So honestly, I thought like both sides brought in really great points. I ultimately voted for the government. And Youngshun, I thought you spoke really well. And like when you started speaking, I'm like, oh whoa, this girl knows what she's saying. And like you brought in a lot of sources and points. And even like when in the cross-examination, like you responded very well, which like I was impressed with. You were a little bit like aggressive, like maybe like you didn't let him like finish his sentence sometimes. But like I thought overall you did a really great job. Let's see. Michael, you had really good like eye contact and like the way you spoke and like your the speed of your voice was like really good. sometimes I feel like you couldn't respond to the cross-exam. I feel like you could, but like you just didn't. But like overall, I really liked how you spoke. Karina, you spoke like very well and very clearly, and your ideas were like very organized, which I liked. And you brought in a lot of great points. Tanner, you needed you brought in like good points also. You needed like more eye contact, and I like the point how like you showed that the effects of the past like was kind of used for like present points.
Sorry, that was my V. I was focusing over here.
Yeah. And yeah, you brought on statistics with the 97.8 model, but I feel like that's also a really high number, and like yeah, like just like they said, like more support on that. But overall, both sides were great.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sabera.
Sabera.
So pretty much everything has already been said, but again, Yushin, I thought you did the best overall. You knew not only your information for your side, but also the opposition's, which made me seem like you knew the most out of everyone. Michael, you spoke really clearly, and I liked how you made it really relatable in the beginning of the of your debate, just saying like I think it was a school analogy, I think so. And then Karina, also I thought you spoke really clearly and made a lot of good eye contact, which was great. Your sources may have been brought down by the other team, but I still thought you were really great in your presentation overall.
Right. Hi, I'm Christine. I voted for the government. Yungshen, you were great. I thought it was obvious you knew your topic through and through. You put a ton of time into the research. You knew both sides. You were great, and you also stood your ground really well during cross-examination, so that was just an added bonus on your side. Michael, you were also really great in your presentation. You spoke really clearly. It was really easy to follow along, and I really appreciated the time you took to really emphasize the burden of proof that you guys had to prove, because I think that was a problem a lot of the government sides had earlier in this quarter, is meeting that burden, and you made sure that we all knew that you guys had met what you had laid out. And then Karina, you spoke really well. Your arguments were really organized, and I really appreciated that about your side. And then Tanner, again, I just think since you have gone twice, you have debated twice at this point, it would have been nice to see kind of you put some of that constructive feedback that you got the first time into effect the second time. But yeah, so thank you.
Yes, please.
I'm Jason.
Hi, Jason.
I voted for the government because I felt that I could trust their argument more than I could trust the opposition's argument. Especially, I could really tell that Yungshan, as everyone said, knew a lot about models, but if I could give her one critique, it seemed that she knew so much about models and she was trying to get it all out that at some points it seemed slightly rushed. So I think if you talked a little bit slower and maybe took out a few points but really emphasized the most important points, it would have been an even stronger argument. Michael, I thought you did a really good job in your speech, and your final comments was one of the things I wanted for me when you said not all models have to be accurate, but we proved that enough are accurate that we met the burden of proof. But I thought that in your cross-examination, or sorry, when you were being questioned, that you kind of like gave up a little on her questions because you really seemed like you knew what you were talking about from your speech and final comments, where you could have, instead of just saying that you didn't know about her sources and her questions, you could have said, well, I'm right because my sources are stronger here, and like here's why. So I thought that that was the one critique I would have there. And then Karina, I thought, did a really good job in her speech, and I thought she asked really good questions in her cross-examination. But overall, I just felt that the government side I could trust more than the opposition side.
One thing I wanted to say to Michael was that when you were being crossed, I felt the deer in the headlight. You seemed scared or baffled or silent. And fake it till you make it. Just go, no, that's no big deal. You know, because your credibility sank a little when you were silent, or I don't know, or you know, a little too, I don't want to say honest, but watch yourself tonight. See if you couldn't come up with some alternative answers to them. You do know the answers to those questions. I just think you were just panicked a little. So that would be something to work on. Yeah. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
I voted
Sarah asked a very good question at the BBS today.
Thank you.
Yes.
I voted for the government, but I'll start with the opposition. Tanner, I actually thought you had some wonderful points, but it was kind of overshadowed by your demeanor, which was at times very unpleasant. There were some things I think you could have stressed more. The climate gate and the corruption of the IPCC were two huge, huge things. I don't think they were given enough attention. If they were, I think a lot of people in this room would have voted for your side. Karina, I thought throughout the whole debate you were the most composed and you carried yourself with a lot of grace, and I think you argued beautifully. Throughout the whole thing, I think you were the most steady. Yumshan, I think actually one thing people fail to realize is that you got stronger as the debate went on. And I think Tanner's aggressiveness towards you kind of fired you up. You got a little bit and it reflected well. I think you got stronger. So it went from just someone who knows stats and models really well to someone who's really enthusiastic as well. And Michael, I think the one thing you did that hasn't been brought up before, not that I remember, is you started questioning the credibility of Karina's source with the bias, which was very interesting. I think ultimately that argument didn't fully win me over, because then you have to start wondering, can you not bring in things like Fox News or MSNBC, which obviously have a political leaning? I don't know, it's a worthwhile question, but I thought that was very interesting that you brought it up, and I think you did very well in your cross-examination as well, when you were crossing Karina.
Good, thank you, Sarah. Yes, please.
Hi, Arthur.
Hi, Arthur.
Gave my vote to the government, but I thank both sides for participating in the debate. Just touching on some things that were not mentioned before. Yungshan, I liked your body language and your gestures. I remember you were doing some of this thing and pointing your finger up, emphasizing important points that or numbers that you were mentioning. You had great evidence, as people were mentioning. Michael, I think that your strength was your vocal delivery. You were very concise and you were provided very comfortable with tempo, so it was very easy to follow along your ideas. You were not rushing through your speech, so that was a strength on your behalf. Karina, I feel like your message was very well structured. You had very good evidence. However, I would recommend making emphasis on the most important points and explaining them a little bit more, not just pointing out the numbers or statements, or just actually explaining what it means. You did a very good job. Tanner, I think it's just a similar recommendation as to Karina. Just emphasize your points a little bit more, because emphasizing it and explaining your points really makes your audience understand what you mean. So,
Yeah, I thought also his point about the unexplainable pause that the models failed to pick up was a good point. Can we go real quickly if someone along here has a new comment? Because it's chomping at the bit at the door, baby.
I'm just gonna skip to the star of the show, Tanner. You savage! Oh my God. Okay, I think that there are three people in this classroom who have a very cocky style of debating. There is me, there is Louis, and then there is you, Tanner. The only difference is that we won our debate, and you did not. I understand where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. That's too long for your number ago.
Oh, jeez.
I the desire to put holes in the arguments of your opposition, and I think we're similar in that we like to get our way, right? And that's probably going to get us pretty far. But I thought that you patronized and frustrated Yunshun to the point where she got really aggressive. And Jennifer, you thought that this is excusable because he's a boy, then maybe that's going to excuse like what I'm about to say.
I think that's mischaracterizing.
I think if you had done this to me in my debate, I would have probably gone like physically confronted. Like, really pissed off about this sort of stuff. And like, I think one day, being like this, I don't know what you're like in real life, but I think one day if you act like this in real life to people, like me, you might find yourself with a serious physical injury. I'm serious. As a result of being puppy. So, yeah, I think you should turn it down a little and it might actually help you. Because I have like several torn muscles in my neck from being cocky prick, what they're calling them, and it was from being overly confronting and aggressive like you were in that debate, I thought. Yeah, because your points weren't bad. I thought some of them were better than Yunshin's, to be honest, and you could have won it if you kept like a composure and not been too aggressive. But yeah, mate, just ride to the bus.
Well, other than your overt and dainty threats, thank you.
Oh my god.
Okay, on that happy note, our work is done.
Okay, how do I just click